Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Conversations with Rob, now called Fire Breathing Rob. We are picked up occasionally on 10 different radio stations all over the country. So thank you for the radio stations that do pick us up. And also, we are trying to build this channel on YouTube. So for the podcast element of the channel, if you could please subscribe, like, comment on our videos, and also share them to some of your progressive friends or even people that aren't progressive to get the word out. You know, we like to have the differences of opinions on our channel. So thanks so much. Today I have a special guest who I'm very fond of. I've read a lot about him, and he is the co-founder of the RootsAction.org, which is a very progressive organization. This is Norman Salmon. He is an American journalist, media critic, author, and activist. He's wrote dozens of books on, war, presidents, etc. And he's also, as I said, the co-founder of the Roots.org, and did run for office in 2012 for the U.S. House of Representatives in California's 2nd District. So, Norman, thanks so much for coming on the program. We greatly appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Rob.
So, Norman, can you first start off the interview and tell us what got you into politics and media in general?
Well, I was born in the early 1950s, so when I became a teenager, the civil rights movement was really in full bloom. And as somebody 14, 15 years old living in the state of Maryland, I started to think about it and why could white people go to a lunch counter and in a lot of states in the country, black people couldn't, or buy a house in a particular neighborhood? And like a lot of young people, I think, and other ages as well, there's a sense of fairness that kicked in. And I thought that was wrong. So when I was 15 years old, I went on my first picket line. And then I came to understand that the Vietnam War was escalating. And that after first, I didn't know what I thought, but I read about it, thought about it. And by the time I was about age 17, I was going to anti-war demonstrations. So that is really part of what put me on the path.
Okay, so let's talk about the organization that you co-founded, the RootsAction.org. I'm on your email list, and that's how I found out a lot about you and your organization. Can you talk about that? What made you start that organization and what it's all about?
Yes, I co-founded RootsAction.org with my friend Jeff Cohen, who a few decades ago founded the media watch group FAIR, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. And about 10 years ago, we felt that while there were a lot of good websites that give information and analysis, there weren't a lot of action arms that we felt particularly connected to. There was, of course, the 800-pound gorilla, you might say, MoveOn.org, and we thought some of what they were doing was very good, but they didn't seem willing to take on war and the U.S. perpetual war, which was already clearly becoming endless, or maybe to be more precise, they seemed too tied to the hierarchy of the Democratic Party. And so they were much more willing to criticize a war, for instance, when George W. Bush was in charge of it. But then when Barack Obama was in charge of it, they tended to go silent. And I think that we need a single standard, or we just get tangled up in partisanship and hypocrisy. So RootsAction.org was founded really with the idea that we need to be independent of political parties. We need to have a single standard of human rights, of healthcare, education, housing. We're against bombing people, particularly for purposes of empire, you might say. And so we started with nothing, Rob, really. We had a zero list. Well, Jeff and I were on the list, so we had 2 people on it. And we gradually have built a national and international email list to the point we have 1.2 million active in the United States. And everybody, of course, as you've done, is invited to go to rootsaction.org, sign up your email address if you are willing, your name and zip code as well, if that's not necessary. And then we send along action alerts. And it's really about action because we need to understand, but we also need to work together for change.
Yeah, Norman Salmon here. He is an American journalist, media critic, and also the co-founder of RootsAction.org here on the program, Fire Breathing Rob. please subscribe. I want to talk about this. We're going to take a step back in the primary process. I know you've been running all over the place. You've been in New Hampshire and all over the country covering this primary. But before we get into what's going on now in the primary, let's take a step back and go into New Hampshire. Now, I'm a big Twitter guy, and as following RootsAction.org, know you. Saw this on Twitter, and that the Buttigieg campaign was trying to get you arrested for handing out Medicare for All literature. Can you tell the viewers about that? Because this is insanity.
Yeah, it was really, for me as a longtime activist, sort of an extra bonus that the Pete Buttigieg campaign would actually go the extra mile into the absurdity of calling the police, because I was passing out flyers, as you say, in favor of Medicare for All. Now, if I'd been passing out flyers saying how great Pete Buttigieg is, they wouldn't have called the police. They would have probably said, thank you very much, or they would have at least left me alone. But Pete Buttigieg was speaking inside a student union building at Keene State College in New Hampshire a few days before the state's presidential primary. I was there, I heard him speak, and I stood outside the student union as people were leaving, and I was passing out a RootsAction.org flyer that really advocated for healthcare as a human right and called out Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden, by the way, for their affinity with and their support for the profiteering healthcare industry. And it was very specific about ways that Buttigieg and Biden have really pushed the line from the hospital, pharmaceutical, and insurance industries to the detriment of people's well-being, of having healthcare as a human right here in the United States. And long story short, I was approached within a few minutes by somebody with a little official Pete Buttigieg medal badge on, telling me, stop passing that out. And I said, I understand the First Amendment. And he said, stop passing that out. And I said, I understand the First Amendment. And a minute later, he was calling in the campus police, who called in the city police, who told me in no uncertain terms, if you don't get off this campus, we're going to arrest you. And so I got a written order. I've been barred from the Keene State College campus for a year. And I think it just goes to the, as you say, it's a sort of absurdity example of how open debate is sometimes threatening to the powers that be. I mean, really, news media are overwhelmingly against Medicare for All. They're interlined with and intermeshed with corporate America. And yet, even the corporate media exit polls show that in one presidential primary after another, most people are in favor of government-coordinated healthcare for everybody. So we have a big, I would say, disconnect between the corporate media line, the Joe Biden line, and what people want, which is what I believe Bernie Sanders is articulating for.
Yeah, he did to you. It's just a joke, but thankfully he's out of the race.
Yes, I think thankfully that he is, and it's an attitude where they're trying to keep their messaging homogenized, and they don't like disruption, and it's really a testimony to the importance of the First Amendment, because once the windpipe of the First Amendment gets stepped on, then we don't even have the diversity of views and the capacity to dissent.
Right. Norman Solomon here on Fire Breathing Rob, founder of RootsAction.org. Norman, I want to go into this, and let's start hitting on what's going on right now. We've seen the coronavirus has impacted, everything in our country right now. There's pretty much, I believe, an upcoming recession coming up with, everything being closed down. I'm in Florida right now. Disney is closed down. Universal is closed down. They're closing down all the theme parks, a lot of sporting events. So it's really taken a toll on the economy. Can you talk about what the impact of the coronavirus and this upcoming recession will have on this presidential race?
I was very moved by Bernie Sanders' address to the nation just a few days ago as we speak. It was approximately, I would say, March 12th or so. And he was very much able to put this terrible crisis with coronavirus in a context of healthcare as a human right, and that everybody has a right to be tested. Everybody has a right to full healthcare if they're struck by this terrible illness. And that's in a broader context of that we're all in this together. And unfortunately, a lot of the messaging that comes from the corporate media has come from now Joe Biden, certainly coming from the Republicans, is when you strip away all the niceties or the supposed niceties, you're into it yourself. It's about you and your family. And we're all like a basket of crabs, whoever can climb to the top. And maybe you'll get some help, but ultimately, you're not owed health care. And we're going to make it affordable. Well, you know, affordable is a buzzword, and it's for often high premiums, high deductibles, many different layers of quality of coverage. That's not what the future that is humane for this country is all about. And so it's not that we should, or that Bernie is trying to politicize this. He's putting it in a context, and he's saying that there has to be an all-out mobilization with massive funding at every level to help working people, the elderly, children, provide health care for all. And that runs against the sort of corporate healthcare model that is being supported by the Republican Party and much of the Democratic Party. So, I mean, this is a horrible crisis. A lot of people are going to suffer. As you pointed out, we're headed to a recession at best. And I think at the same time, it opens up an opportunity for dialogue, because more than a few weeks ago, more people are understanding now that Medicare for all is not just a good idea. It's a way to have a humane society that takes care of everybody.
Agree. Medicare, if the time for Medicare for all is any time, it's now, especially with the corona crisis right now in this country. I want to talk about Bernie. You kind of brought this up, and this has been going on for quite a while. And you know, my thing is, why do you believe that Bernie is a better candidate than Biden against Trump? Now, I'm a Bernie supporter, as you are. I've been watching Bernie since 2010 when he used to go on the Ed Show on MSNBC. God bless his soul. I wish he was still alive to fight for Bernie right now, because the media is really crushing Bernie. But in your own words, to somebody that's maybe a Biden supporter that's listening in, why do you believe Bernie is a better candidate than Biden against Trump?
Yes, well, I think we all can agree, or certainly we agree, that Donald Trump needs to be defeated. And no matter who the Democratic nominee is, we need to get behind that candidate as the only tool for getting Trump out of the White House. In 2016, I can't remember how many times, but it was a lot of times, I was told that Hillary Clinton could definitely beat Trump and Bernie Sanders definitely could not. And it was the conventional wisdom that we're now hearing again about Joe Biden. It's the establishment wisdom, it's the pundits, the same pundits really who were telling us how Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in 4 years ago. Now, some people, Rob, I should say, naturally will tell us, yes, but Hillary Clinton got 3 million more votes, and that's true. She won at checkers, but everybody knew it was chess. Everybody knew that it was the Electoral College. And a lot of the same lineup is still there now, where pivotal states like Michigan, like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and potentially Ohio have been hard hit by these corporate-friendly trade deals like NAFTA, very unpopular. And you can bet that if Joe Biden is the nominee, Trump, the hypocrite that he is going to hammer on him for supporting NAFTA. And that's one of the ways that if he gets to the general election, I believe, Biden is very vulnerable. That said, the polls are showing that both Biden and Bernie Sanders run very well, run ahead for the most part, run ahead of Trump in a matchup for the general election, not just nationally, but in those key states. And it's sort of hard for people to say, we don't know. People want to pretend, often the pundits do, oh, I have a crystal ball. No, nobody's crystal ball is completely reliable. We don't know who would do better. I don't know. And I think anybody who claims to know that Biden would run against Trump better than Bernie, we're sort of whistling past the graveyard. We're just shooting in the dark. We don't know. So since we don't know, why don't we support the candidate who has a much better program? Why don't we support a candidate who is independent of Wall Street, who's really going to fight for working people, for the health care of children and the elderly? That's Bernie Sanders. That's why I think we need to continue to support him.
Well, the thing is, and I know that, Joe Biden's won quite a few contests in a row. We know Bernie picked up 4 delegates today with the Marion Islands vote today. So that was a good pickup. He's only really down by 150 delegates rather. But if you
Right.
look at the mainstream media and listen to them, they act like he's down by about 700 delegates.
Yeah.
My thing is, Norman, and this is what my answer is, we saw the voter suppression in Michigan, where young people at Michigan State, University of Michigan, were waiting in long lines. We saw in Texas, there was a man that waited 9 hours in line. And there may be a recount in Dallas County over there because there was shenanigans, and that might help Bernie. Now, he may not win the state, but it's good for delegates. We also saw where you are in California that there were people waiting in long lines. LA County had broke down machines. So, it's funny that none of that gets said really in the media. It's more voter theft to me than voter suppression, because it's really a theft of our democracy that these people are voting for Bernie Sanders. They did the same stuff in 2016. My parents, live in Rhode Island, where I'm originally from. They shut down 50 polling places in Rhode Island in 2016. They did it all over the country then, and they're doing it now. Why is this not brought up? Why is it said, oh, young people aren't coming out for Bernie. He's not getting all these people that he said he was going to bring out. That's not true. That's fake news. That this stuff is not being brought out with the voter suppression. Why do you believe this is not getting out to the regular people?
Well, it's a great point in that, for instance, in college towns, and we know that young people overwhelmingly favor Bernie, there's a real shortage of polling places. And this is, of course, in many states intentional. The governor and or legislature, Republican and or conservative overall, and they have intentionally shorted communities, college neighborhoods and so forth of adequate voting stations and polling booths and so forth. And so it is an assault on democracy. And frankly, this is a big irony to me, because we've been hearing for years from Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, mass media, how Vladimir Putin has attacked American democracy. And when you make a list of the voter suppression, dozens and dozens of techniques have been documented of voter suppression in this country. The Kremlin had nothing to do with any of them. This is homegrown attacks and undermining of democracy. And as you point out, we have had this problem now throughout this primary season so far, and it mitigates and cuts against the youth vote that is very pro-Bernie. And I would say at this point, for Bernie to drop out would be, I think, unfortunate. And I hope he stays in the race. Mathematically, he has, as you pointed out, a 150-point deficit, but there's a long way to go. And Biden doesn't even have half as many delegates as he would need to win the nomination.
Doesn't Bernie take off the gloves and fight? We saw in 2016, he didn't go after Hillary Clinton with the emails. Donald Trump did. Whether it was an adequate thing that he did that or not, he should have did it. And that was what people want. People want to fight. I know Bernie is a fighter, and I'm not trying to take anything against him, but he doesn't take off the gloves against Biden. He calls him his friend. Whether it's his friend or not, Joe Biden is not a friend to people in my age group or even people all over the country. He's lies about criminal justice reform. He lies about civil rights. He lied about Nelson Mandela, saying he was locked up. I mean, and then you could go after Joe Biden on the stamina, because he did a speech in Mississippi for 7 minutes on the stage. I mean, he's bumbling and fumbling over words. Why doesn't Bernie go after this, Norman?
Well, I think that there's a needle that Bernie's trying to thread. As much as he held back 4 years ago, as you point out, and didn't really attack Hillary Clinton very much, to this day, the Clinton wing of the party is claiming, pretty falsely, that Bernie somehow undermined her by running against her in the primary. Well, that's what primaries are for, just as they lie about, by the way, that he didn't support her in the general. He went from one city and town to another.
35 rallies.
It's just an absolute lie coming from Hillary Clinton that Bernie didn't go all out, because he went all out to defeat Trump 4 years ago in the general election. Now he's really trying to find the right medium space, because yes, he doesn't want to hold back from criticizing and in some ways attacking Joe Biden. But if he really goes for the jugular and really damages him, then at least the concern from some Democrats is that it will make it easier for Trump to win. I agree with you, because these are not secrets about Joe Biden. The Trump campaign has the footage. They have a complete file on all the lies that Biden has told. And of course, for Trump to accuse somebody of lying is, preposterous, because Trump is the champion liar. Nobody can come close. But still, you listed some of the ways that Biden has lied. He's also lied about his support for the Iraq war. It's pathetic. He was on MSNBC again in an interview just a few days ago, lying about how he didn't really support the Iraq war. He did before, he did during the invasion. He was supporting it a year afterwards. He spoke to the Brookings Institution and said he believed his vote for the war was correct. That was 9 months after the invasion. He was the most powerful Democrat in the Senate to support the invasion of Iraq. When the invasion came to a vote in October 2002, and he chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and quashed any dissenting testimony, didn't allow it. So he's highly problematic. And I think, Bernie is, unlike a lot of politicians, he's not ego-driven. And we saw that in a certain stage of the presidential primary race, Pete Buttigieg, he did a 180 about Medicare for all. He really started to attack Bernie in really go for the jugular ways that I don't think Bernie would ever do, even if he was totally justified. So it's a tough call, because I really do believe that Bernie deeply, deeply is committed to defeating Donald Trump. And at the same time, he understands that Joe Biden would not be nearly as good a president as we need. And the dilemma is that he wants to defeat Joe Biden, but he doesn't want to help Trump. And he's just going to have to figure that out.
Norman Solomon, Roots.com Roots.org rather, co-founder. Norman, but my thing is, why, with all this stuff, and, who am I? I'm not a doctor to say that Joe Biden has dementia, but something is wrong where he's fumbling and stumbling over his words. This is not a stuttering issue. I know people that have had stuttering issues. He just makes up things on the stage. I'm not saying Bernie has to personally go after it, but
Right.
Why doesn't a surrogate or somebody go after? I mean, this is for the presidency of the United States. The year 2000, Al Gore. Now, we could say what happened in Florida. I believe that he won the presidency in Florida, that they rigged that, but whatever. It didn't happen. He lost. 2004, another moderate, John Kerry, lost. Barack Obama won because he ran as a progressive in 2008. Hillary Clinton, another moderate, lost. I mean, the Democrats keep running moderates. They lose. So that's why I believe Bernie has to take off the gloves. We're at a peril in this country where, if Trump wins again, it's going to be even worse than before. And we could get even worse Trump. And if Joe Biden wins, it's going to be Barack Obama ×2 again. It's going to be mediocre. And then we could get a worse Trump going up against Joe Biden. So that's why I'm really worried. And, I just, I don't know what else to do. It's really scary.
Yeah, Rob, I share that fear. And I believe that Biden is a weak candidate against Trump. I think the news media have been falling all over themselves once they realized that it was Biden or Bernie. The corporate media on the whole let up on Biden. They stopped pointing out some of his weaknesses, because the corporate media on the whole perceived Biden as the firewall, the way to stop Bernie, the only way. And so the fact that, to put it politely, he's lost a few steps mentally, the fact that Biden is really stumbly is being sort of papered over by the mass media. And you can bet that Trump isn't going to paper it over if it's the matchup in the fall.
Right, 3 more questions. Norman, I want to talk about this. We talked about beating Trump, and I want to beat Trump as much as you do. But my thing is that I voted for Hillary Clinton as a Bernie supporter. And 70% of the people that voted for Bernie voted for Hillary Clinton, way more than Clinton supporters voted for Barack Obama when they went in the primary in 2008. I know that that's a lie that the mainstream media says that all Bernie supporters voted for Jill Stein or Trump. That's a big fake made up lie. But I want to get to this question. We vote blue no matter who. And we vote for, let's say Biden wins, even though we don't want him to, and then they put in somebody like Hillary Clinton did. No look to the progressives. They put in Tim Kaine, or he puts in some neoliberal this is for VP, and the progressives, vote for that person. Joe Biden loses again. Donald Trump wins. The progressives, and this is what I'm worried about. We always bow down and we always stand in line and vote for Hillary Clinton, vote for Joe Biden. Don't you believe it's time for the progressives to stand up? They keep getting, I won't say the S word, but they get doo-doo on them because they don't stand up and they vote blue no matter who, and nothing helps us. Then Joe Biden already said he's going to veto Medicare for all. So, I mean, what is it? We just vote and get another neoliberal like Barack Obama in there? I mean, there's just no hope.
Well, the Bernie Sanders campaign is historic, and the Bernie 2020 campaign is stronger than the 2016 campaign, I believe, when we consider there were 20 different candidates, and there's 2 left standing, and one of them is Bernie. And the capacity to move the agenda, the frame of reference, the discourse has been just stunning, whether it's free public college tuition, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's a lot of different issues, Green New Deal. It's already moved the discourse in a progressive direction. It's very frustrating. It's infuriating to see Democrats in power bow to the will of Wall Street, refuse to confront the existential threat of climate change, and so on and so forth. So the best course of action I can see is to continue to run progressive candidates in Democratic primaries, do all we can to get delegates for Bernie at this juncture. At the end of the day, I hate to say it, if it is Biden, it's going to be a choice of evils. And I believe that Trump is much more evil.
Yeah, agreed. Our last 2 questions. We just saw, it just came over the news wire that Georgia has postponed their primary. Louisiana just postponed it a couple of days or so back. Do you believe, first of all, that we should be postponing these primaries until maybe June, like Louisiana did, because of the threat? And, we heard that this coronavirus can be transformed not just by touching, but it can also be transformed to people through breathing. And that's a big concern. You go into these polling places with a lot of elderly people, even young people are getting sick and dying. So what is your take on the postponement of these elections? And second part of that, if it is postponed, because we have a lot of big states coming up. Florida's on Tuesday. We also have New York coming up still, and quite a few other states, 25 other states. If it's postponed, do you believe that'll help Bernie because he has more time to get his message out, as we saw him do his coronavirus message the other day?
Well, I do think from a public health standpoint, it makes sense to postpone. And frankly, I'm disappointed in Florida and Ohio going ahead as we speak anyway, with the most imminent Tuesday primaries, 2 very big states. In terms of the political effect on Bernie, as it happens, I think the postponements are good for Bernie for reasons you allude to. And we already know, as you say, Louisiana and Georgia have postponed, and that might change the dynamic. And especially because this terrible coronavirus crisis underscores the insanity in human terms of letting the insurance companies run our healthcare system in effect. And so this is an opportunity to make more clear that Medicare for all is what we need.
All right. And I want to end with this question. With 25 states, as I said, / territories left, do you believe the Sanders, what would you actually, as far as giving information, you're a very knowledgeable person. You've been working in the progressive movement for quite a long time. What knowledge would you give to the Sanders campaign to try to get this campaign up and kicking right now? Would it be, as we talked about, to go harder against Biden? Would it be to more so emphasize the Medicare for all bit with the coronavirus, what would it be?
Well, you mentioned that I ran for office. I actually ran for Congress in 2012. And during the year and a half I was on the campaign trail, I got vastly more advice during that year and a half than I ever had in the rest of my life combined. I mean, it wasn't even close. And often the advice I got, which was vehement and absolutely emphatic, was contradictory to other advice, which was equally vehement and emphatic. So I'm sort of reticent, especially because I think while he's not infallible, Bernie is very wise and very astute, and his tone and his content has been so excellent. I'm reticent to really give advice, but I would say this. I think in the very civil way that Bernie behaves, he should continue to take this campaign all the way through the primary season. And I think he should continue to challenge Joe Biden on all of these hugely important issues that Bernie has laid out during the Bernie 2020 campaign. That's RootsAction.org. So
Roots
if people
Action,
want to
sir.
sign up, and everybody's invited to do that. If you want to get our action alerts, go to rootsaction.org. That's ROOTSACTION.org. And that way we're in touch and we help to build strength of the movement. And often my articles are posted there, and most important are action alerts. So the best is yet to come, I believe. We have tremendous obstacles to a humane society, but a lot of people are organizing, and I think the progressive movement is on the rise.
RootsAction.org. It's Norman Salmon. Check out also on Amazon or on his website, his books, and maybe you can order one of those. It's, as we've talked for, how many minutes we've talked, he's, given us a lot of great, valuable information about the progressive movement. Norman, thanks so much, and I hope you come on again. We'd love to have you on.
Oh, I'd very much like to. Hey, thanks a lot, Rob.
Thanks, Norman. Have a great night. Appreciate it again.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.